Shopping for a front mount mower. A couple things that I have learned over the years. Can't say this is everything. A couple things that I've learned over the years. The important parts about shopping for particularly an F series. So anything from F910 all the way up through F1145. This is an F935 here, but as you shop for pieces of equipment like this, a couple things that you need to pay attention to. So I think first thing that a lot of people want to look at is the hours. The hours don't matter too much to me. I'm more or less concerned on how the machine runs itself. Crank it up, start it up, drive it. If it's got a decent sized deck on it, 60 inch obviously takes a lot less horsepower to turn. But if it's say an F912 or something like, or F911, F911's got a Kawasaki and the F912 has a gas Yanmar. You know, probably there's not going to be a 72-inch deck on those, but there's probably going to be a 60-inch deck. The engine should engage the deck just fine, mid to full throttle. That's what I would do. You know, same thing with this deck right here, 72-inch deck. The 22 horsepower Yanmar in this machine should engage this deck perfectly fine without laboring. The deck should not take 5 or 10 seconds to come up to speed. It should be almost instantaneous. You flip the switch, the RPMs die, maybe a little puff of black smoke from the diesel, and you're up and running. This machine can go from stop to full blade in less than 2 seconds. I think that's perfectly acceptable. You know, make sure there's no big leaks on the engine. The engine compartment is nice and clean. So for instance, you know, cosmetics sometimes are not the best because these are a lot of times commercial or municipal machines. And so cosmetics are eh. But if we look at the engine here, you know, I can see that there is a leak out of the valve cover. Not all that necessarily uncommon. It looks like it's, you know, just leaks around the valve cover quite a bit. But overall, down the side of the engine, it's actually pretty clean. That tells me that somebody's cleaned it on a regular basis. At the same time, if you look back under here by the frame and everything, you can tell it necessarily has not been, make sure the camera, you can see that. If you can see it, you can tell that there's not that much gunk built up on the frame. At the same time, you know that the pressure washer hasn't hit it recently and left some gunk there. So it's not like they pressure washed it for sale. So it's really representing itself as it is. You know, at the same time, you know, there's nothing too concerning on top of the engine. You know, there's no active leaks. There's no puddles under it or anything. There's no big places with grease and grime. You know, just look it over. Make sure the engine runs nice and smooth. And honestly, even if it has higher hours, that is not that big a deal. As you've seen with this particular machine, it's got almost 4,700 hours on it. I've mowed with it for almost an hour and a half now, or I've kind of beaten back weeds because it's too dry to mow. But I've operated it for almost 2 hours now, and I haven't found anything that I did not expect with this machine. At the same time, you can lift up the seat. There's just a little latch that you pull forward. You know, make sure that this compartment is nice and clean. I'll turn the flashlight on here. You know, and I mean, this, you know, it's got some grass down there by the battery, but there's nothing. I mean, actually, this is probably one of the cleanest front mounts that I have ever seen. I mean, nothing, you know, it's just super clean. I mean, there's just, you know, there's no oil or grime on top of the differential or the transmission pump, anything along those lines. You know, it just looks really, really nice and clean under there. You know, I think that this is probably the best example I have ever seen in terms of cleanliness on a machine. You can see a little leak there for the overflow on the transaxle. Don't know if I can get the GoPro to zoom in that far. You know, this machine was maintained. There's no leaks around on the front axles, because you have to remember that these types of machines have the same brake front end. Basically, they have the differential and the axle shafts out of a 420 or 430 without the 2-speed. And so really, you know, one of the places those are known to leak is around the axle seal, and there's no evidence that the axle seal is leaking or anything like that. You know, just overall, you know, give the machine a nice once over. I don't see anything concerning over on this side either. Figured we walk over here. You know, yeah, it's got condition issues with the rust. Look at it from both sides. If you can look down there, make sure I can see it. I don't know if I can't zoom in, but it looks like right where my light is at, it's a Fafnir bearing. I don't know if that's OEM or not, but it looks replaced. That's always good because that drive shaft does have a tendency to wear out on these machines. Over on this side, once again, no leaks. The deck in this particular case does have some welding to it, but it looks like the welding was well done. Evidently there was a hole right there. There's a crack right there. There was a crack up here on these front mounts, crack right there. But all of it's been welded up, which always excites me to see. It means that somebody took care of it. Yeah, okay, decks wear out, but I mean, honestly, if somebody's taken the time to weld on the deck, that tells me that somebody's taking care of it. And so, you know, it honestly has a nice battery in it, which I was kind of excited about. You know, so overall, you know, just check them, give it a thorough check over. Make sure that the PTO back here, that hub right there, that you can see that those belts attached to, that hub can become loose. Make sure it's not loose. That bearing is sitting in there nice and tight. Both my hands are full, or I would kind of pull on it. I'll push on it with my shoe. So, you know, that whole shaft that runs forward to do the PTO, you can go ahead and continue to see it. It kind of terminates right there at the end of my light, where that Fafnir bearing was. And you can go ahead and I use this front access cover right here. And you can see where the drive shaft connects to that front right there. You know, there's just nothing, you know, make sure all of those driveline components are nice and tight and make sure there's no issues there. And the last thing you want to look at is the deck. Aside from the welds, make sure that these casters can oftentimes become loose like this. And, you know, the casters are expensive. So if you can deal with that, deal with it. If not, something to consider. But those are my kind of thoughts on what you need to look at if you're going to buy a front mount. Just something to keep in mind. If you have questions, comments, they're great machines that can be picked up for not very much money, somewhere in the neighborhood of generally $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000 if it's in really good shape. So if you have questions, comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching.